I wasn't looking for trouble the night. I opened the GPS app on my phone. But the little blue dot showing my wife's car wasn't at yoga like she said. It was parked outside a stranger's house across town. And the worst part, that wasn't the first time it had been there. My name is Liam. I'm 45 years old. I work as a regional logistics manager for a medical supply company outside Columbus, Ohio. It's not a flashy job, but it's steady. I've always been the kind of guy who values stability. Pay your bills on time. Show up when you say you will. Don't lie to the people who trust you. Simple rules. For most of my life, they worked. I was married for 16 years to a woman named Claire. We met in our late 20s, back when everything still felt possible. She had this calm confidence that pulled people in. Dark hair, sharp sense of humor, the kind of smile that made strangers talk to her in grocery store lines. I thought I understood her. Looking back now, that's the part that still stings. We didn't have a dramatic marriage. No screaming matches. No broken plates. Just the slow routine of a shared life. Mortgage payments. Weekend grocery runs. Watching crime shows half asleep on the couch. If something was wrong, I didn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to. Our daughter, Emma, had just left for college that fall. The house suddenly felt too quiet. Claire and I were still adjusting to the silence. Empty nesters, she joked one night while pouring wine. She tried to make it sound exciting. I remember nodding, but something about the way she said it felt distant. Like she was talking about someone else's life. Around that time, she started going out more. Nothing dramatic. Just little things. Dinner with friends. Late yoga class. Helping Jenna with something. I didn't question it. Claire had always been independent. I trusted her. Trust is strange like that. Once you build it, you stop checking the doors. The GPS was my idea. Not for tracking her. My company offered a discount on vehicle safety systems through our insurance provider. Crash detection, roadside alerts, location services if the car got stolen. I figured it was practical. So I installed the device in both our cars. Claire barely looked at it. Another one of your responsible gadgets, she said with a smile. I laughed. That should have been the end of it. For months, life kept moving. Work got busy. Emma called on Sundays. Claire stayed out a little later than usual some nights, but nothing that felt alarming. Until one Tuesday evening. I was sitting at the kitchen table finishing some paperwork when my phone buzzed with a notification from the vehicle app. Location alert. I almost ignored it. But something made me glance down. Claire's car wasn't at the yoga studio she usually went to on Tuesdays. It was parked somewhere else. A small residential street about 20 minutes across town. At first I assumed the GPS was wrong. Technology glitches all the time. Still, I zoomed in. The car had been there for almost 2 hours. I stared at the little blue dot on the map longer than I'd like to admit. 100 reasonable explanations floated through my head. Maybe a friend lived there. Maybe yoga got canceled. Maybe she was helping someone. I closed the app. Told myself to stop being paranoid. When Claire got home around 10, she walked in carrying her gym bag. Yoga ran long, she said casually, dropping her shoes by the door. I remember watching her carefully while she poured herself water. Good class? I asked. She nodded without hesitation. Really good. The lie was so smooth it barely made a sound. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. But something quiet had shifted inside me. The next Tuesday, when her car left the driveway again, I opened the GPS app without even realizing I'd reached for my phone. And the blue dot went right back to the same house. The second Tuesday wasn't an accident. At least that's what I told myself as I sat at the kitchen table watching the small blue dot move across the map again. Claire left the house around 6:15. Yoga night, she called over her shoulder. Same words. Same tone. Same gym bag. I waited 10 minutes before opening the app. Her car drove past the yoga studio. Straight across town. My stomach tightened before the car even stopped. The blue dot settled on the same quiet street as the week before. Same house. Same driveway. And this time, I didn't close the app. I just stared at it. 2 hours passed like that. Me sitting in silence, watching the location stay perfectly still. By the time Claire came home, I already knew exactly what she was going to say. She walked in smiling, cheeks slightly flushed like she'd just finished a workout. Long class tonight, she said, dropping her keys in the bowl by the door. I nodded slowly. Yeah. New instructor, she added. Keeps everyone late. Another smooth lie. Not even a pause. I studied her face while she talked about stretches and breathing exercises. The whole time I kept thinking about that house 20 minutes away. Who lives there? The question kept echoing in my head. But I didn't ask. Not yet. Something about the situation made me quiet instead of angry. Like I needed to understand the whole story before I said a word. The following week, I tested something. Tuesday came again. Claire grabbed her yoga bag like always. You working late? She asked casually. Probably, I said. She kissed my cheek and left. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my keys. My heart was already pounding. I told myself this was crazy, that I should just trust my wife. But my hands were shaking as I started the engine. I waited 5 minutes before pulling out. Just enough distance so she wouldn't notice me behind her. The GPS showed her halfway across town by the time I hit the highway. Same route, same turns. I followed from a distance, feeling like someone else had taken over my body. When she pulled onto that quiet street, I slowed down and kept driving past. Claire's car was parked in a driveway beside a small gray house. Front porch light on. No other cars outside except one pickup truck. My chest tightened. I drove another block and parked. For 10 minutes, I just sat there gripping the steering wheel. I could walk up, knock on the door, end the mystery right now. But something stopped me. Maybe fear. Maybe the feeling that once I saw the truth, I couldn't unsee it. So I stayed in the car. Eventually, I drove home. That night, Claire came back around 10 again. Same routine. Shoes by the door. Gym bag on the chair. Yoga kicked my butt tonight, she said with a tired laugh. I watched her carefully. Maybe I should come with you sometime, I said. The reaction was instant. Too fast. Oh, you wouldn't like it, she said quickly. It's mostly women. Then she smiled and kissed my cheek like the conversation was over. But something had cracked open. The next morning, while Claire was in the shower, I opened the GPS history on my phone. I hadn't checked it before. Turns out, I didn't need to follow her at all. The car had been going to that same house every Tuesday and Thursday. For almost 3 months. I sat there staring at the screen. 16 years of marriage. And suddenly I was looking at a map that told a completely different story. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. Instead, I zoomed in on the address and wrote it down on a piece of paper. Because if the GPS was telling the truth, then the real question wasn't where Claire was going. The real question was who was waiting for her there. The address sat on my desk for 2 days. Just a street name and a number. I kept looking at it between emails at work, like it might explain itself if I stared long enough. It didn't. By Friday afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I left the office early and drove across town. The neighborhood was quiet. Older homes. Big oak trees hanging over the street. The kind of place where people still waved at each other from their porches. I slowed down as I approached the house. Gray siding. Small front yard. White pickup truck in the driveway. Same one I'd seen Tuesday night. I parked half a block away and just sat there for a minute. My chest felt tight, like I was about to walk into something permanent. Eventually, I got out of the car. Each step toward that house felt heavier than the last. When I reached the driveway, I noticed something small that made my stomach drop. A pair of men's work boots by the porch. Big ones. The front door was slightly open. Not wide. Just enough that voices slipped through. I heard Claire laugh. Soft. Comfortable. Not the polite laugh she used around strangers. The real one. My hand hovered near the doorframe. I should have walked away. Instead, I knocked. The voices stopped instantly. For a few seconds, nothing moved inside. Then footsteps approached. The door opened slowly. And standing there was a man I'd never seen before. Early 50s maybe. Broad shoulders. Graying beard. Wearing a flannel shirt like he'd just come in from working outside. He looked at me with mild confusion. Yeah. Behind him, I heard Claire say something. Then she stepped into the hallway. And froze. I'll never forget the look on her face. Not guilt. Not panic. Just shock. Like she'd been caught in a version of life she thought I'd never see. Liam, she said quietly. For a second, none of us spoke. The man glanced between us. You know him? He asked. Claire swallowed. That's my husband. The word hung in the air like something fragile. The man blinked slowly, then stepped back a little, running a hand over his beard. Well, he muttered under his breath. I felt strangely calm. Calmer than I should have been. Yoga class. I asked Claire. Her eyes dropped to the ground. The silence stretched. Finally, the man spoke again. Look, I didn't know she was married, he said. Claire's head snapped up. That's not true, she said quickly. He frowned. You told me you were separated. Now the confusion in the room felt thick enough to touch. I looked at Claire. Her face had gone pale. Claire, I said quietly. How long? She didn't answer. Instead, she wrapped her arms around herself like she was suddenly cold. The man sighed heavily. About 4 months, he said. Claire shot him a glare. But the damage was done. For months. Every Tuesday. Every Thursday. The GPS had been telling the truth the whole time. I nodded slowly. Still calm. Still quiet. That pickup truck yours? I asked him. Yeah. Name? Mark. I stuck my hands in my pockets and looked around the house behind him. Cozy living room. 2 coffee mugs on the table. Normal life. Just not mine. Then I turned back to Claire. You told him we were separated? I said. She didn't deny it. Instead, she whispered something that felt worse than the lie. I didn't know how to tell you. That's when the calm finally cracked a little. Not into yelling. Just something colder. I nodded once. Okay. Then I turned and walked back to my car. Neither of them followed. Neither of them called my name. The whole drive home, my mind stayed strangely clear. 16 years. And somehow the GPS knew the truth before I did. But when I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something that made my hands tighten on the steering wheel. Claire's car was already parked there, and the lights inside the house were on. Claire was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked inside. No gym bag this time. No yoga clothes. Just silence. She looked like she'd been waiting for hours. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying anymore. The house felt tense, like the air had been holding its breath. I closed the door slowly. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Finally, she said, I figured you'd go there. Her voice was quiet. Tired. I set my keys down. You could have told me the truth, I said. Claire stared at the table. Her fingers traced a small scratch in the wood we'd made years ago moving furniture. It wasn't supposed to turn into that, she said. That? You showing up. I let out a short breath. No, I said calmly. You sleeping with another man. That's the part it turned into. She flinched slightly. For a while we just sat there across from each other like strangers sharing the same room. Then she spoke again. His name is Mark, she said quietly. I know. You talked to him? Yeah. Another silence. Claire rubbed her temples like she had a headache. It started after Emma left, she said. The house felt empty. You were always working late. We barely talked. I listened without interrupting. I met him at the hardware store one afternoon, she continued. We started talking. It was nothing at first. Nothing. I'd heard that word before in stories like this. Nothing always becomes something. You told him we were separated? I said. She nodded slowly. I didn't know how else to explain why I kept seeing him. That answer sat in the room like a bad smell. So instead of fixing our marriage, I said quietly, you just replaced it. Claire's eyes filled again. It wasn't that simple. It looks pretty simple from where I'm standing. She wiped her face. You're acting like you're perfect, Liam, she said. Like you didn't check out years ago. That one landed. Not because it was completely true, but because part of it was. Work had taken a lot of my time. Long hours. Stress. Deadlines. But cheating had never crossed my mind. I didn't lie to you, I said. She didn't answer. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Finally, she asked the question we'd both been avoiding. So what happens now? I leaned back in my chair. For the first time all night, I really looked at her. The woman I'd built 16 years of life with. And somehow, she felt like someone I'd just met. I'm not yelling, I said slowly. I'm not throwing things. I'm not begging. Claire watched me carefully. I just want honesty now, I continued. For once. She nodded faintly. Are you in love with him? The question sat between us. Claire looked down again. A long pause passed. Then she whispered, I don't know. That answer told me everything I needed to hear. I stood up from the table. Claire's eyes followed me. Where are you going? She asked. To get some air. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. But just before I stepped outside, she said something that made me stop. Her voice was barely above a whisper. There's something else you should know. I turned slowly. Claire looked terrified now. The kind of fear that doesn't come from getting caught, but from what comes next. And when she finally spoke again, the words made my stomach drop. Mark isn't the only one. The words sat in the air longer than they should have. Mark isn't the only one. For a second I thought I misunderstood her. I stepped back inside the house and closed the door slowly. What does that mean? I asked. Claire looked like she wished she could rewind the last 10 seconds of her life. It's not what you think, she said quickly. I almost laughed. That sentence usually means it's exactly what I think. She rubbed her face with both hands, like the truth physically hurt to hold. There was someone else before Mark, she said. Before? She nodded. How long? Claire hesitated. About a year. The number landed hard. 16 years of marriage, and apparently the last year of it had belonged to someone else. Who? I asked. Just someone I met through a friend. Name? She hesitated again. Daniel. I stared at her. So let me get this straight, I said calmly. You started seeing Daniel while we were still married. Yes. And then you started seeing Mark. Her voice was barely audible. Yes. The room felt strangely quiet after that. Not explosive, just empty. Claire finally looked up at me. I never planned for any of this, she said. Things just kept happening. That sentence told me more about her than anything else. Things just happened. Choices just happened. Lies just happened. Meanwhile, I'd been sitting at the same kitchen table, believing my life was still solid. I walked over to the counter and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Claire watched me like she was trying to read what came next. Are you leaving? She asked softly. I took a sip before answering. No. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, but she relaxed too soon. I'm not leaving the house, I said. Her face changed again. What does that mean? It means I'm staying right here. She frowned. Then what are you saying? I set the glass down and looked at her. For the last few months, I said slowly, you've been living like you were single. Claire opened her mouth, but no words came out. So here's what happens now, I continued. You're the one who leaves. The words settled heavily between us. Claire blinked. You're serious. Completely. This is my home too. It was, I said quietly. Another long silence filled the kitchen. Finally she whispered, where am I supposed to go? I shrugged slightly. You seem to have options. That one hit her. Hard. Tears slid down her face again. I never thought it would end like this, she said. Neither did I. But that was the strange thing about betrayal. It doesn't explode all at once. It erodes quietly. One lie. One secret. One Tuesday night at a house across town. Until one day you realize the person sitting across from you stopped being your partner a long time ago. Claire packed a bag that night. Not much. Just enough for a few days. She paused at the front door before leaving. Liam, she said softly. I looked up. I did love you. Past tense. I nodded once. I know. Then she walked out. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. And for the first time in months, the house felt completely honest again. Later that night, I sat alone in the living room. The GPS app was still open on my phone. The blue that used to be Claire's car was moving slowly across town again. But this time, I didn't follow it.